Well, homeopathy fundamentally is a 200-year science which is designed to stimulate the healing forces of the body, not to just suppress symptoms or momentarily get rid of problems by taking, say, analgesics or decongestants or tranquilizers or so on, but to cure all of the acute and chronic diseases that can happen to people by stimulating their own healing forces in order to accomplish the cure. Even if you just have a simple definition of health as being free of symptoms without having to take medication for the rest of your life. I found that we weren't able to accomplish that, and worse than that, a lot of the medication and surgery was toxic. It was actually harmful, and that doctors nowadays are dealing with, 40–50% of the time are dealing with the side effects of their own treatments and not just with the disease itself. So I began looking for other alternatives, and some of my experiences, my exceptional experiences in medical school, included people who were benefited by chiropractics and by nutrition and a variety of other things that were non-toxic. So it made sense to me that at least as a physician I should start doing non-toxic things first, and if I have to, then I can resort to the toxic methods. And the thing that attracted it to me, other than its systematic nature, is the fact that it's fundamentally non-toxic. It does not toxify the body or create side effects. It does require a great deal of training, and it is possible to do some subtle harm, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But it's not primarily in itself toxic. It doesn't do harm to the body. If we give a wrong remedy, basically it doesn't do anything to the body. It doesn't make it better, and it doesn't make it worse. So that attracted me. It was either going to help somebody or was going to do pretty much nothing.
Well, when the founder of the modern system of homeopathy was pursuing this form of cure, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, he did not have to combat the modern antibiotics and cures that we have today. Why was he specifically interested in finding an alternative to the medicine of his time?
Well, the medicine of his time was pretty barbaric also. It included leeches and bloodletting and that sort of thing. And as a matter of fact, Hahnemann, the way he got into homeopathy was primarily because he was disturbed by the damage that standard medicine was doing. He was a very widely known physician of his time. He had many honors. He was not only a physician, but he was a pharmacologist and a chemist. And he had, before he even got into the field of homeopathy, he was in charge of the standardization of medicines in all the pharmacies throughout Germany, or at least a portion of Germany, I believe. So he was very knowledgeable about medicine, and then when his own children got sick, he went through a crisis of whether he could apply bloodletting and leeches and purgatives and that sort of thing, which were the medicine of the day. And that's what led him to try other methods. The irony was that at the time, diseases like scarlet fever and cholera and that sort of thing were just raging all through Europe. And homeopathy was so effective in curing that even when his colleagues in the medical profession attacked him, the public prevented anything from happening.
Did he actually discover?
He discovered that there were fundamentally two different approaches to symptomatology or to disease. One was what we can call nowadays the law of contraries, and the other was the law of similars. The law of contraries stated that if somebody has a pain, then you try to find a substance which will counteract the pain, or if there's a runny nose, then you try to counteract that with a decongestant. And then also, and this was well known since all the way back in the most ancient of medical writings, in the Vedas and the Sumerian texts, was always stated by all physicians that there's also a law of similars, that a substance which will produce symptoms in a healthy person will cure those same symptoms in a sick person. So for example, if there was a poisonous plant and we were to take it and it would cause, say, diarrhea or dysentery, if someone were to get dysentery as part of an epidemic process, then you could take a small amount of that very plant and it would cure the symptom. Nobody knew, or even today nobody really knows why it is that this is so, but it's been an empirical observation throughout history. And so in the process of his translating various books, when he discovered that this law existed, he reasoned that it should be possible to systematically test that law. We should be able to take various substances and administer them to healthy people and very systematically take down the symptoms that occur, and then use that as the basis for choosing those substances in treating disease. So when scarlet fever came, this was just before the time that bacteria were even understood by Louis Pasteur and so on. And so nobody knew what it was. They thought it was, you know, revenge from God or something like that. And they didn't have any way to deal with it except by the standard methods of the day, which were ineffective. And what he found was that the law of similars enabled him to find substances which he could treat whole villages of people with and completely protect a village from scarlet fever, whereas the next village down that wasn't treated homeopathically was not protected. So his results astounded everybody, and it spread throughout the world, and that's how we have homeopathy today.
So we have.
But then at the same time, and there's different dimensions of how I could explain this, but on a political or historical level, what happened was that the collusion between the standard medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry, which was very much threatened by homeopathy, led to a report called the Flexner Report, and the government adopted that as to set standards for the medical colleges in the United States. And the consequence of that was that homeopathy was virtually cut out of the United States, and there were only 3 schools that even had a department of homeopathy as a result of that, and the Hahnemann Medical College in Philadelphia was one of those. But within another 10 years or so, even those departments were shoved out of the medical schools, so that now when I first heard the word homeopathy in medical school, it was said with such a disparaging tone of voice that you know, the idea was that if you wanted to give somebody a placebo or something that was totally ineffective, then you give them a homeopathic dose, which means a very small dose. And that was the kind of context that most doctors nowadays hear of homeopathy.
Sugar pills.
Sugar pills. Right.
Well, so we find the 19th century is the age of natural foods and natural remedies, and the 20th century is processed foods and chemical remedies.
Absolutely.
Doctor, Mr. Jacobson is here to...
Yes, I've got it. Thank you. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doctor?
Did the streptomycin help any?
Well, it seemed to help a bit. At least I'm not seeing orange anymore.
That's good. That's real good.
But now I've developed some other symptoms. My mouth is like cotton, and there's a loud ringing in my ears.
Oh, that's mine. To drink plenty of water and sleep in your socks.
Well, what about this?
Boy, that's 1 in 20 side effect from the streptomycin. Don't worry about it. I've seen worse. Here, take one of these every hour until the swelling goes down.
Okay.
And then take 3 of these every 4 hours until the fainting spell stops.
What fainting spell?
The ones you're going to get when you take one of these every hour.
Well, I hope these don't have any side effects.
As a matter of fact, on the slight chance of a nosebleed or a lot of throwing up, you take 6 of these 6 times a day.
6?
Don't take 7. No, they could cause impotence.
Well, what if I'm extra sensitive?
Well, that's a marvelous question. You should be a doctor. You should have considered that.
The origins of homeopathic medicine can be traced to ancient Greece and Hippocrates, the father of medicine. The term itself derives from 2 Greek words, homeos and pathos, meaning similar and suffering, words that present clues to understanding the dynamic at work in this system of medicine. Indeed, the basic theory of homeopathy is that like cures like. Hahnemann referred to this principle as the law of similars. He made this discovery by first experimenting with cinchona bark, from which the substance quinine is derived, used to treat malaria. While healthy, Hahnemann was able to ingest quantities of the bark sufficient to reproduce the symptoms commonly associated with the disease. He concluded that what could induce the symptoms in a healthy person could trigger a cure in one afflicted with the disease. Like cures like. means that a patient's symptoms provide direct clues for what his body needs to rid itself of an illness. For example, if a person is suffering from hay fever allergies, a homeopath might give him a tiny dose of allium cepa. This remedy is derived from the red onion, a pungent vegetable known to induce watery eyes and runny noses. By giving this patient a substance that will reproduce his symptoms, the homeopath seeks to trigger the body's natural ability to overcome illness and heal itself. Today, homeopathy is recognized and practiced throughout the world as both a standalone method of treatment and as a complement to conventional medical therapy. Historically, conventional medicine has focused on the control of disease, assuming for the most part that individuals with the same diseases can be treated in the same way. In contrast, homeopathy seeks to treat the individual, not the disease. Believing that each organism is unique, the homeopath seeks to determine the root cause of the illness that has weakened the individual. Then, by administering a minute dose of a specially prepared substance, capable of producing in the healthy the same characteristic symptoms as those presented by the sick individual, the homeopath seeks to stimulate the patient's vitality and, in turn, restore the body to a natural state of health.
People do really well if they think of homeopathy first instead of last. If they go to homeopathy to try to get a curative response and get well first, and then fall back on conventional medicines if they absolutely need to, that keeps their immune system and their natural recuperative abilities more intact.
In recent years, medical science has begun to understand the limitations of antibiotic therapy. A tendency to overprescribe these drugs has many researchers concerned about creating new immunities that could reduce the effectiveness of these drugs to heal. In addition, the uncertainty of encountering multiple and dangerous side effects from these drugs has many patients concerned that the risks of taking these medications may outweigh the rewards, especially with prolonged use.
What's really changed probably since 1960 on is the general population, has become far more active and involved in their health and the concerns about their health, and probably related to the fact that the baby boomer generation is aging. And so we're looking for solutions for problems, and it's forced us to be more educated about the solutions that are available. And then also I think there's a general acceptance today, or an understanding that while conventional medicines are very helpful in certain solutions for problems, there are lots of problems that can be solved with a less toxic way.
When that vital force is weakened or fails to balance us in harmony under the strain of those outside energies, we perceive that aspect of change as the symptoms of illness and disease. It is logical then to provide a therapy which balances and strengthens that level, increasing the effectiveness of our own healing process, our own vital force.
Of exactly what you said. I think that the experience of the 19th or the 20th century so far has been that this technological quantification method of science, where we think we know what we're doing, the almost anti-ecological approach to health that's gone on in the first part of this century, I think it's finally dawning on people that that's not working, and that the body does have mechanisms, and that there's a mystery to that, and we don't understand all of the fine points of exactly how that works, but that it's possible to work with the body, and that there are laws of cure. And so people now have gotten into all of these things that you mentioned, and they're learning how to nurture the body's own healing forces, and that's able to cure a great deal of the discomfort that's around. And it's also widely practiced throughout Europe. You can find homeopathic pharmacies on almost every street corner in the major European cities. England, the royal family has been treated by homeopathy for many generations. Throughout South America and Central America, homeopathy is very popular. It's really only, at least in the Western world, I guess, it's really only in the United States that it isn't widely known right now. Let me give some stories. I remember a case that very much impressed me in my early years of homeopathy. I was still a little skeptical. I mean, it's hard to believe that such a minute amount of substance can produce the kind of effects that my teachers were telling me it can do. And so when I first was practicing homeopathy, I did it I would do nutrition first, and then maybe I'd try homeopathy. But I had one case that very much impressed me. It was a woman who had driven her car off of a cliff, basically. She had been drinking, and she wasn't even watching where she went, and she just went off a cliff. And that was 2 weeks prior to my seeing her. She had a massive bruise. Her eyes were closed shut. She had a large laceration that was all the way across her forehead. The concussion was so severe that she couldn't read a newspaper and understand what it was saying. And that one dose of arnica, just like that on the tongue, she came in the next day, and nobody on my staff or myself could recognize her because the bruise had totally disappeared, and her mental state was completely clear and so on. But the amazing thing about it is that we shake and dilute the remedies beyond the point at which there's no molecule of the original substance left. So that if we were to take this plant and administer that as a remedy, in the remedies that I use commonly in my practice, there would be no molecule of the original substance left. So there is something that we don't know exactly what it is that's happening. It's a mysterious thing, but there's an energy or an essence or
it's actually been tested, and the original molecule is not there.
Well, there's a point called Avogadro's number, at which it's known in chemistry that after that particular point, there's no molecule left. Statistically, I mean, it's a statistical statement because you can't measure one molecule. But we dilute, for example, Avogadro's number is a 10 to the minus 23rd dilution, 10 to the minus 24th dilution, which means that if we would just measure the dilution directly, it would be a 1 over a 1 with 23 zeros after it. That much of a dilution would be the point at which there's no molecule of the substance left. We use very commonly, what I just took right there was a 10 to the minus 2,000 dilution. That means a 1 over a 1 with 2,000 zeros after it. It's an astronomically small dilution. And we have not found a limit yet as to how far you can shake and dilute and still extract the curative power. The more it's shaken and diluted, the stronger the remedy is. So that if we're up to a 10 to the minus 200,000 is probably the highest that we make in a practical sense. Dilution, that remedy is far more powerful even than the one that I just took.
Homeopathy should not be confused with either vitamin therapy or herbal medicine. While homeopathy does indeed make use of natural organic substances in the preparation of remedies, it is a separate and unique system of treatment. Here at the Research Center, Home in Karlsruhe, Dr. Marianne Hager and her staff are conducting internationally recognized scientific research on homeopathy. Their clinical studies on homeopathy involve physicians from all over the world. Over 10,000 patients have participated thus far, with more than 35,000 patient contacts to date.
Wir waren ganz überrascht. Wir haben eigentlich erwartet
We were very surprised. Of course, we had expected that the homeopathic remedies would be just as good as the conventional medicine. And we were surprised to find that the homeopathy in this period did better than the conventional medicine. The patients had quicker results, had significantly fewer side effects, and had a distinctively higher satisfaction level with the treatment. A significant building block that was laid during the course of our clinical study is that we work electronically with remote data entry.
Because what we observe when people are cured homeopathically is that there's an opening towards a greater degree of freedom in the whole person on every level that we can see. And very often, especially when we're treating chronic disease, people will come back and describe experiences along the line of what you're talking about, internal states of well-being and opening of their consciousness. And people describe it as a clearing away of the old limitations that were binding them previously. And that's what we look for in determining whether we've given the remedy correctly or not. We're not just looking to see that their migraine headaches go away, but we're looking to see that the level of their soul, or whatever the terminology would be, is also responding, that it's opening up. If you just give cortisone for a skin ailment and you succeed in getting rid of it, then it's driving the disease deeper into the body. And we call that suppression in homeopathy. And it's the same is true if you take a vitamin that's aimed at treating a specific, let's say, skin problem or insomnia or something like that, and simply suppress that one symptom without strengthening the person as a whole, it can drive the disease in deeper. Or if we give a homeopathic remedy that's incorrect, or acupuncture treatment or whatever. I think that's a very important message at the beginning of the forum here. You know, the goal of any therapy, as you've already alluded to, is not just to get rid of specific concrete symptoms that we can measure and see and suffer, but it's to heal the whole person, to strengthen the whole person so that their susceptibility to complaints is eliminated, and that their overall vitality and their well-being and their sense of freedom on mental and emotional as well as physical levels is enhanced. That's what we want to look for from any therapy. And so as we encounter the myriad of possible therapies now that we all hear about, which ones are good, which ones are bad, the big question to ask is it making the person as a whole better, or is it just simply removing symptoms with the danger that eventually the disease will end up on deeper organs or on deeper levels emotionally or mentally?
I do find that because homeopathy begins at the very deep levels, when a person is not even aware that he has a gallbladder problem or a liver problem, that he might be discouraged that the cure isn't doing anything because he doesn't see immediate results in the surface complaint of a blemish on the face or a this or that.
Yeah, sometimes people get impatient. Homeopathy is a slow therapy. In chronic disease I'm talking about. It's a slow therapy. It can take months to years to accomplish cure. And for people who are purely focused on a blemish or something like that, then yes, they can get impatient. But usually what happens if the prescribing is correct is that they start to feel so well inside, and it's an experiential thing. It's not anything you can measure on an instrument or a dial. People, when they experience that, they come back saying, well, you know, my headaches are the same as they were before, maybe let's say after a month of treatment, and it hasn't gotten yet out to the physical. But it doesn't bother me so much. I don't care. I can function with the headache. I'm free within having the headache. And then that's a good sign. We know we can wait and that eventually even the headaches will disappear.